While most presidents wore suit jackets, ties, and dress pants all the time, you don't have to any longer. Because Presidents Unplugged has merch. If you want to check out some new shirts to buy as a nice gift for somebody in your family or just something that you want yourself, go to presidentsunpluggedmerch.com to check out new shirts, hoodies, crew necks, and anything else that you can dream of. Now in many more colors and new designs coming soon. I'm very excited for the President's Unplugged merch store to finally be open. Now, let's get back to the show. I am thankful. I'm thankful for my country. I'm thankful for the freedoms I wake up with every morning that people around the world can only dream of. And I'm thankful that even in a time when our political climate feels divided and loud, we still have the ability and the responsibility to choose unity, to choose kindness, and to choose gratitude. Thanksgiving is built on that foundation, recognizing not just what we have, but why it matters. So today, on this very special Thanksgiving episode of Presidents Unplugged that I like to call Pilgrims, Pardons, and Progress, a very presidential Thanksgiving, and we're going to look through traditions, history, and the surprising ways that our presidents have shaped this holiday into what it is today. And why is this random Thursday in November important at all? Let's do this. Let's start with where the Thanksgiving story usually begins. Let me set the scene. You're in your third grade classroom. Your teacher is attempting to teach you multiplication tables, and one random day of the week, they pull out some orange, yellow, red, and black construction paper and a bunch of glue sticks and say, "Okay, class, make pilgrim hats." This is the sole reason that I still don't know what 11 times 12 is. I'm obviously joking, but past the glue sticks and the paper feathers, this story actually matters. In 1620, the Mayflower set out on a journey that would become one of the most referenced stories in American tradition. These were people seeking religious freedom, looking for their space to practice their faith without the monarchy breathing down their neck. A theme that echoes throughout American history, showing that our freedoms reach way farther than we can ever imagine. When they finally reached what would become the northeastern United States, they faced absolutely brutal conditions. Hunger, disease, cold, a completely new environment. Nearly half of them didn't even survive the first winter. But the Pilgrims' survival wasn't just grit, it was partnership. When they got here, they found a group of Native Americans. These Native Americans weren't like, "Wait, we live here. What are you doing?" They were very kind. The Native Americans taught them how to plant, how to hunt, and how to adapt to the land. That collaboration led to what we now call the first Thanksgiving in 1621, a 3-day feast centered on community, gratitude, and yes, way more food than anyone needed. So when you're shoving your third serving of your grandma's mashed potatoes down your throat this Thanksgiving, thank those Native Americans and Pilgrims that worked together for the greater cause. That core idea, giving thanks, working together, is the part that made it all the way into our modern holiday. But if the Pilgrims laid the foundation of Thanksgiving, It was the presidents who built the structure that we know today. And before I get into the far, far back history, let's talk about something modern that you've probably seen before. One of the weirdest and most goofy traditions that presidents do: the presidential turkey pardon. It's one of the funniest visuals you'll ever see in politics. The President of the United States, arguably the most powerful person in the entire country, standing next to this giant bird that half the time they can't even control, while reporters are taking pictures, and the president announces something. That this one turkey, sometimes two turkeys, out of millions, gets to live another day. This tradition began under George H.W. Bush in 1989, but earlier presidents occasionally spared their holiday birds too. And it's become a lighthearted moment and a reminder that even in serious times, the country can share a smile. They also love to give them, like, the funniest names known to man. Like, let's talk about some of the greatest ones: corn and cob, peas and carrots, Harry the turkey, Liberty and Bell. Our most recent one, the turkeys that were pardoned on Tuesday, Waddle and Gobble. And my favorite turkey of all, Carl. But Thanksgiving runs much deeper into the presidency than a couple lucky turkeys each November. One of my favorite parts of the Thanksgiving story involves Abraham Lincoln and one persistent woman named Sarah Josepha Hale. Most people don't even know her name, but she played one of the biggest roles in making Thanksgiving a national holiday. Sarah was an author, and she believed America needed a unifying day of gratitude for every state to enjoy. How'd she do this? She wrote letters, lots and lots of letters. She wrote to governors, congressmen, influential leaders, and after years of trying, she wrote to the President of the United States himself. She just didn't send one letter to Abraham Lincoln. She sent many, pressing him over and over again to establish a national holiday of thanks. While Lincoln was dealing with, the Civil War, the single most destructive and divisive moment in American history, her letters stood out. They were different from anything else Lincoln was seeing. She believed Thanksgiving would give families a reason to pause, a reason to reflect, and a reason to appreciate the blessings even in the darkest moments of the nation. Lincoln agreed. And in 1863, the bloodiest year of the Civil War, I would like to add, he issued a presidential proclamation making Thanksgiving a national holiday. A call for gratitude in the middle of war. That's incredible to think that a holiday so based on unity and togetherness was made in a moment defined by division. And because Sarah Hale never gave up, today millions of Americans gather every year to celebrate that holiday that she dreamed of. While George Washington himself might not have had an Instagram page, Presidents Unplugged does. If you want to see some presidential content and overall updates on the show, come to the Instagram at presidents_unplugged. See you there. But Lincoln wasn't the only president that shaped Thanksgiving. Fast forward to the 1930s, a completely different time. We were all unified, but we were unified with an awful stock market. The Great Depression. Franklin D. Roosevelt was leading the nation, fighting for economic recovery. Traditionally, Thanksgiving was held on the last Thursday of November. That's how it had worked since the Civil War. But in 1939, November had 5 Thursdays. Ooh. Roosevelt thought moving the holiday up 1 week would extend the Christmas shopping season, making some money. which he believed at the time would help jumpstart that struggling economy that everyone was worried about. And so he shifted Thanksgiving 1 week earlier. People went wild over this change. Some states accepted it immediately. Others refused and celebrated the original date. Wait, that's a problem. If some people celebrate Thanksgiving on one day and some on the other day, we're not unified. And it's hilarious to me that for a time, the state you lived in depended on when you celebrated Thanksgiving. Some newspapers at the time started calling this new date Franksgiving. Part Franklin, part Thanksgiving, as a jab at FDR. But eventually, Congress stepped in to settle that chaos, and in 1941, Thanksgiving became officially set as the fourth Thursday of November, the date that we still celebrate today. So if you've ever wondered why Thanksgiving moves slightly each year, but always stays within the same week, you can thank Franklin Roosevelt. Now, as my grandma asked me as I was writing this episode, why is it on a Thursday? That's actually a great question that I had to do a lot of diving into. Normally we talk about the week that it's on or whatever, but here's why it's on a Thursday. Ever been to a youth group, a secondary day of the week other than Sunday where your church gets together to do stuff? Well, that's kind of why Thanksgiving is on a Thursday. When the Pilgrims came to the New World for this religious freedom, they were pretty staunch about their faith. So other than the Sabbath, which was at that time on a Saturday, they had one other day of the week where they would get together for church events. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, people would be at the markets buying and selling their goods. But there was one day free, Thursday. On that day, they would get together not only for events, but to show admiration and thanks for one another. So a couple hundred years later, this pretty cool guy named George Washington made the first ever national proclamation of Thanksgiving. This not only proves to us that George Washington has set a lot of standards that we don't realize he set, but it also proves to us that the idea of Thanksgiving was long before Lincoln and long before FDR. So Washington just so happened to make this speech on Thursday, November 26th, 1789, and from then on, the Thursday day stuck. And it is the reason that we celebrate this amazing holiday on a Thursday to this day. It's amazing how each small piece of this story, the Pilgrims, the presidents, the great pardoning of Karl the Turkey, lead to something much bigger: progress. The progress of a nation learning to pause, learning to reflect. The progress of people learning to be thankful even when times are hard. And the progress of a country realizing that no matter how divided we may feel, there's always common ground somewhere beneath our feet. Abraham Lincoln, being the president during the Civil War, understood that better than almost anyone in our country. When he declared Thanksgiving a national holiday in 1863, the country was split in two. Brothers fought brothers. Families were shattered. Entire communities were divided. Yet Lincoln believed, despite everything, that Americans still had reasons to be grateful. He believed that no matter how dark the moment was, gratitude could bring light. And that message is as relevant today as it was then. Because we live in a time when it feels like division is everywhere. We see it on the news. We see it online. We see it on social media. We hear it in debates, in conversations, sometimes even around our own dinner tables at Thanksgiving. When that one guy brings up politics in the middle of dinner, man, that guy sounds like a jerk. But Thanksgiving gives us something rare. It gives us a pause button. A moment where we can set down the arguments, the negativity, and we can focus on what truly matters. It reminds us that even in the most challenging times, there's always something to appreciate. And I'm not talking about Mariah Carey's hit single, All I Want for Christmas Is You. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's friends. Maybe it's simply the privilege of living in a country that allows us to have our opinions, to speak freely, to pursue our dreams, to be able to talk about unity in a divided country on the President's Unplugged podcast. The Pilgrims celebrated community after surviving hardship. They worked so hard together to eventually sit down, enjoy good food, company, and just spend some time with the people that they had worked so hard with. Lincoln called for unity during a civil war. Roosevelt reshaped the holiday during economic crisis, and today we continue to gather because thankfulness is bigger than politics. Thankfulness is bigger than disagreements. Thankfulness is bigger than whatever the world is throwing at us. As you sit down with your family and friends this week, whether it's on Wednesday, Thursday, as we like to call it in our family, Flank Steak Friday, everyone has their own traditions. Think about the family. Think about the friends. Think about the journey that brought Thanksgiving to your table. From a group of settlers surviving their first brutal winter just to eat those glorious microwavable Bob Evans mashed potatoes, to a persistent writer convincing a president to make that holiday that she was so passionate about national, to generations of Americans coming together year after year. It's a reminder that even through our hardest moments, we've always found something worth giving thanks for. And that's really the heart of this episode. Thanksgiving wasn't created in an easy time. It was created in a difficult one. And that's why it still matters today. Because the message behind Thanksgiving is simple. Even in a divided world, we can find unity in thankfulness. Even when things seem hopeless, there's something worth appreciating. And even when it feels like everything is moving too fast, Christmas is next month, and the whole world's just flying by, Thanksgiving gives us permission to slow down and look what we've been blessed with. And that's why Thanksgiving is so important. Tune in next Friday as we kick off December with Thomas Jefferson, the man who wrote maybe one of the most influential documents in American history, known as the Declaration of Independence, and also might maybe be the reason why you enjoy Kraft mac and cheese today. Learn about him and much more next week on President's Unplugged. I wish you a happy Thanksgiving. I'm Ty Svensson, and I'll see you soon. God bless. We need to make an executive decision now. The executive decision to follow President's Unplugged on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today to be notified weekly that your favorite presidential podcast has released new content. Now, let's get back to the show.